So now that big media outlets like the Washington Post, the LA Times, and prominent establishment political leaders on both the right and the left, and even Comedy Central, have been forced to denounce ANTIFA as a violent extremist group, after members of ANTIFA viciously attacked photojournalists and innocent bystanders in Berkeley, even so-called progressives wouldn't be stupid enough to still defend them, right? Nah, they've gone beyond defending them. They're now claiming that George Orwell, iconic author and historical symbol of anti-authoritarianism, would have supported ANTIFA or even been a member of ANTIFA. No, I'm not even joking. They were all triggered by my tweet, which showed a picture of ANTIFA members with signs reading "No Hate." The same signs they later used to hatefully be innocent people with. Along with the words "the most hateful group in America, Orwell rolls in his grave," and the tantrums were almost instantaneous.
Far-right commentator gets schooled by historian over George Orwell and ANTIFA. Twitter uses school InfoWars editor over claim that Orwell rolls in his grave at ANTIFA. Read a fucking book. Historian humiliates InfoWars editor who claimed George Orwell would have hated ANTIFA.
So George Orwell would have supported ANTIFA, and I got schooled for suggesting otherwise. Schooled. You want to see schooled? Well, take your seats, children, because class is about to commence.
Paul, Orwell volunteered to fight fascists in Spain. Essentially, Orwell is as Antifa as it gets. You dumb motherfucker!
Of course I know that Orwell fought fascists in Spain. That's why he would have opposed ANTIFA. Because they act like fascists. They're fascistic in every single way imaginable. Even the far-left mayor of Berkeley, who describes himself as an unapologetic progressive, says Antifa should be classified as a criminal gang. The DHS has formally classified Antifa's activities as domestic terrorist violence, because they use violence to intimidate people and shut down free speech. You know, like the Nazis did.
Lol, Orwell fought fascists in Spain. He was Antifa.
Antifa attacks journalists. They use intimidation and violence to stop journalism.
I'm asking you, let's keep the camera off our side and keep it on their side.
Orwell was a journalist. Would he have supported that? Orwell said if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Orwell supported unpopular free speech. Antifa violently attacks people who engage in what they see as unpopular free speech. They literally burn signs that say free speech. Antifa burns down college campuses to stop unpopular free speech. Would Orwell have supported that? War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength. Stop hate by hatefully attacking people with weapons that say stop hate. Would Orwell have supported that?
Paul, again, Orwell signed up to fight with the militia of the Spanish Marxist Party. That's how much he despised fascists.
The fact that Orwell despised fascists isn't proof that he would have supported Antifa, you total bellend. Little history lesson. By the end of the Spanish Civil War, the fascists had mobilized over 1 million troops. That's who Orwell fought against. Who does Antifa fight against? You know, when they're not fighting trash cans. The elderly, veterans in wheelchairs, 16-year-old teenagers, anyone wearing a MAGA hat or flying an American flag. You can't equate that with a 120-year-old armed conflict that embroiled a dozen other nations and ended up with 500,000 people dead. You total nitwit. George Orwell opposed imperialism. In an essay entitled Shooting an Elephant, Orwell writes, I had already made up my mind that imperialism was an evil thing. ISIS says it opposes imperialism. ISIS propaganda rails against the Sykes-Picot Agreement, an act of Western imperialism that shaped the current borders of the Middle East. Both Orwell and ISIS oppose imperialism. Does that mean George Orwell would have supported ISIS? Of course it bloody well doesn't. Likewise, claiming Orwell would have supported Antifa is a logical fallacy. It's the rhetorical equivalent of saying 2 + 2 = 5, which by its very nature is, you guessed it, Orwellian.
Paul, you are looking pretty stupid. Orwell did fight fascists and was wounded in the Spanish Civil War, whether you like it or not.
That's not the argument, you utter dimwit. Orwell fought fascists. No one's denying that. Antifa fights anyone with a different opinion, innocent bystanders, and throws piss on cops. Big difference. Orwell despised both extremes of the political spectrum. He hated the far right, he hated the far left, because he realised that both resort to the same vulgar tactics. Antifa is clearly a far left extremist group. Orwell hated far-left extremist groups. Mike Potato Head Stuckberry makes this very point in the article in which he supposedly schools me. Quote, while I chose to highlight Orwell's attitudes towards fascism in my thread, we must also understand that he came to resent all totalitarian governments. One can come to despise the extremes of both ends of the political spectrum. Simultaneously, it's not an either-or situation. So thanks, Mike, for making my argument for me. Orwell resented totalitarian governments, including the communist government of Stalin's Russia. Antifa members attend protests wearing the hammer and sickle and flying communist flags. Would Orwell have supported that? Of course not. In Orwell and the British Left, British writer Ian Williams recalls Orwell's underlining of the, quote, old, true and unpalatable conclusion that a communist and a fascist are somewhat nearer to one another than either is to a Democrat. Orwell despised fascists and communists. Antifa is pro-communist. Apparently, Mikey doesn't know how to use Google Images. Orwell was vehemently anti-Stalin. Animal Farm was a literary annihilation of Stalinism. Antifa supports Stalinism. Oh, don't take my word for it. Hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Do you prefer to live in the Soviet Union?
Hell yeah. Stalin would be a hell of a lot better than Trump.
Stalin would be better than Trump?
Yes, he would.
Do you know that Stalin killed 50 million people?
Did you know that the population increased 1.6% under Stalin?
Orwell hated extremists. Antifa is an extremist group. They literally scroll messages that say liberals get the bullet too. Orwell would have hated Antifa. It's quite simple. Orwell also specifically opposed one of the very things that Antifa specifically supports: tearing down historical statues. In 1984, Orwell wrote, every book has been rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street and building has been renamed, every date has been altered. Orwell specifically pinpoints the altering of statues as an expression of authoritarianism. Antifa specifically supports the removal of historical statues. Here's Antifa in France defacing a statue of Charles de Gaulle, an anti-Nazi leader. Altering history to control the future is part of the whole premise of 1984. Who controls the past controls the future. If you'd actually read the book, you'd know that. Antifa supports altering history. Orwell opposes it. Again, it's quite simple. Ever since Charlottesville, some on the left have equated chicken-necked Antifa thugs with the brave soldiers who landed at Normandy in World War II. Yeah, that actually happened. So on the one hand, we have courageous troops who went up against a fearsome mechanized Nazi killing machine versus mom's basement-dwelling cowards who attack women and assault veterans in wheelchairs. Yeah, they're really comparable, aren't they? The ludicrous assertion that Orwell would have supported Antifa is a continuation of this hysterical guff. Equating those who actually fought against fascism with Antifa is the biggest insult imaginable. Let me repeat that. Equating those who fought against fascism with Antifa is the biggest insult imaginable, which is why it's so rich for them to try and claim the moral high ground. Far from having the moral high ground, by equating these scum with these heroes, you couldn't stoop any lower. Far from honouring the historical fight against fascism, you're disgracing it. It's also historically illiterate and so frigging dumb, I can't even believe they're running with it. In 50 years' time, no one's going to be putting up war memorials dedicated to Antifa, you complete idiots. This guy, who the media calls a historian, is actually a biased far-left supply teacher who's so PC he literally banned students from using certain words in his class. Banning words? Now, where have I seen that before?
It's a beautiful thing, the destruction of words.
Sugar, 2.4%. Flour,
You won't have seen the dictionary, 10th edition yet, Smith.
7.5%.
It's that thick.
Coffee, 8.
Sounds vaguely Orwellian to me. The sheer myopia of their half-baked, imbecilic argument is stunning. I'm amazed that I even have to make this video. But hey, dimwits, thanks for the material, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to completely school you once again, while demolishing your sanctimonious claim of having the moral high ground. You don't have the moral high ground. So in summary, George Orwell would not have supported Antifa. He would have opposed them with every fibre of his being. Everything he ever wrote and stood for validates that argument. And you'd know that if you'd stopped virtue signalling for 5 minutes and read some frigging Orwell.